Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope you've all been enjoying Spider-Man and through the Omenpath. I wanted to talk to you guys about two early performers that have been doing relatively well. I wouldn't say that they're tier 1 right now. I think that we're still looking at a lot of Jeskai artifacts and Boros Burn, kind of in that spot. But obviously, right at the beginning in week 0, we're still exploring, right? Things are getting fine-tuned. But one of the new cards that has been performing really well is the Kava Arrow Mind Bitten, however you say it, right? But when it enters, you copy a creature in your graveyard, and then it becomes a 4/4 spider in addition to its other types. And when you do, you exile the card that you copied. Now, what's really cool about this is that it still triggers enters effects. So you can pair it with like Bringer of the Last Gift. When this creature enters, if you cast it, right, it wasn't a good reanimator target because it always was being brought. I guess it doesn't get around the enters effect because it would still enter, but it gets around the if you cast it aspect, right? So that it triggers, because you did cast the Kava Arrow Mind Bitten, it triggers the Bringer of the Last Gift, basically flipping your graveyard into play and putting everything that was in play into the graveyard. And so you have a whole bunch of enablers for this, like Town Greeter to mill, Wail of the Forgotten, Awaken the Honored Dead allows you to mill as well as discard. Tempest Heart, draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. You got the Overlord of the Mistmoors, which helps you mill and bring things back. Harvester of Misery gives you something that you can like target creature gets -2/-2 and you put it in your hand, or you can bring it back to give everything -2/-2 on the board. And then you can also do like Vein Ripper, right? And if you've been around part of the channel, we'll talk about like having 8 payoffs, right? That guarantee it helps you find 1 copy by turn 5. And so that's why we're bringing in Vein Ripper. Gives you an alternative if you're not able to find the Bringer of the Last Gift. But it also works really well if you're flipping your whole graveyard into play, right? Like it, whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So if you're wiping in their whole board of their little tiny bunny rabbits or whatever, then this can also be a stabilizing force. So anyway, it's not anything new. We've seen kind of the Sultai Reanimator strategy before. This one's just kind of a unique take on it instead of going off of the Sultai Reanimator spell. So check it out if you're into that. I think over time. So this is another thing I wanted to talk about really quickly was that as you play more games with an archetype, right? When you're looking at data, the larger the sample size becomes, the larger or the more that it approaches 50%, right? So you'll see something where like a deck will have 60% win rate at 200 matches, right? But by the time you've taken that deck to 1,000 matches, it's unlikely to still have 60% win rate. It will slowly approach 50%. So right now, Sultai Reanimator is around 1,000 matches. It's in, it's high up there. Its win rate is doing well, but that's partly because people don't know what they're up against yet. And I expect its win rate should drop over time, so I think it'll land somewhere in tier 2. Because really, the whole point of my channel is to help beginners navigate. So whenever you see a new set, you're going to see a whole bunch of content creators. Influencers, content creators are basically advertisers, right? They're trying to advertise some form of product, right? And I am advertising basically Untapped, and others are more strictly going for like you should spend your wild cards and whatnot, right? And I feel like it's nice to have both. I'm not saying there's one is better than the other, but I try to exercise caution, and I'm probably too cautious, right? Because I hoard wild cards. But anyway, I try to help people who are new to the game. So while also just trying to stay relevant. So like there's a lot of new decks out there right now. I think Sultai Reanimator should at least be on your list because you'll bump into it more often than not. So even if you're not playing it, it's good to know what's in the list and its general strategy, that sort of thing. So I'm done with my rant. And just on a side note too, I am going to switch how I've been doing the best of 1, best of 3 meta review will be from bronze to mythic, because for the same reason, I'm not sure about the confidence interval in making it just diamond and above, because the majority of the data set is coming from platinum, and I don't think there's a huge difference that's occurring between the platinum players and the diamond players and the mythic players. I think it's more just time played, right? So I really don't think there's any reason to not include the lower ranks, especially because like the bronze and the silver and the gold data represents such a small sample size. It's such a tiny amount of games that are actually because you get up to platinum so quickly, right? Because you need it like what 50 less than a 50% win rate will let you hit into platinum. So anyway, we're gonna tweak some things around tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. Um, since this is also like a smaller time where I can hopefully talk to my community on Sundays instead of the best of one, best of three meta review, which is for a broader audience. I would love to hear back from you guys what you thought about what you've heard on other channels compared to what you've heard on mine, because like I didn't talk about mono white life gain, right? And it's definitely a deck that you can take to Mythic. It's not a bad deck. But I do feel like it was maybe a struggle to get it into Mythic. Similarly, like if I do Bronze to Mythic, Jeskai Artifacts was like the top performing deck. And if you look at like Diamond and above, it starts to dip down in how well it's performing. But a lot of people were like, where's Jeskai Artifacts? So I kind of feel like I think Jeskai Artifacts was one of the better decks, if not the best deck inside the previous season. So anyway, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. I think it's actually better to bring it back to Bronze to Mythic. Unless there's a resounding no, don't do that. That's what I'll be doing. But the other one that I think you should be paying attention to, or at least have on your radar, is Mono Blue Tempo. I think this one's going to dwindle down into tier 3 just by its early performance. Looking at it, it does better in Diamond than it does in the lower ranks. But again, that could be just a small sample size. But anyway, it's the Bellion, the Parched, has breathed new life into this archetype. Whenever you cast a blue spell, it gets +1/+1, and then at the beginning of your instep, you untap it and it becomes a land. So it helps you ramp on your opponent's turn. It's a creature on your turn, but on your opponent's turn, it then gives you mana. So the more that you're playing a flash strategy, the more that just strictly as a ramp card, as long as you're casting the spell on your opponent's turn. So everything in this deck, I think, can be cast on your opponent's turn, not the Spyglass Siren. So most of the deck can be cast on your opponent's turn. The other new card is Detect Intrusion. It allows you to counter a triggered ability, which is really cool. So it's kind of like negate, sort of like it's instances and sorceries, negate hit any non-creature, but you can do it for a cheaper amount with Imweb, which allows you to get more of your interesting ETBs, like the Flood Pit's Drowner retriggering, or because like a lot of times you'll put a stun counter onto something and then you won't shuffle it back into your graveyard and you won't do the ability. And so being able to kind of Imweb that back to your hand to redo again can be a really interesting tempo play. And then getting another map token off the Spyglass Siren, a little less important. Fabloom Trick, I think, is one of the weaker cards in here. It is an instant, does give you flyers. Kind of helps out if you're on the draw more so than when you're on the play. And then we've got the Stoic Sphinx, which is a nice flash way that just as long as it can be difficult for your opponent to interact with it. And then we've got some Soulstone Sanctuaries for the man lands. Again, if we've talked about the lands enough, 18 lets you double spell on turn 3. You need 16 for the 2 double pip, so you're good there. And then the 2 single pips right here want 21. So because of this land, because of playing the Soulstone Sanctuaries, you're actually inhibiting your ability to play Bellion on turn 2. So personally, I would be a little tempted to get this up to 21 sources so that I could hit this 90% of the time if I have it in my hand, because it's better early on. So if I were to make this my own, since I've just give you my 2 cents, right? Run 21 lands and ditch the Soulstone Sanctuaries. So anyway, this one I think is going to need some improvement. It's going to need some fine tuning. Again, like I said, it's probably in tier 2 or tier 3, but it's definitely a new archetype that we'll start seeing people play on the ladder. So as always, thank you for listening to my ramblings. I hope this finds you well on a Sunday. Tomorrow we'll talk about the meta review. And we'll get back to doing the meta breakers eventually. We'll get back to doing the community deck tech. I'll do my best to keep you kind of posted on when that's coming down the line. So thanks for being a part of my community. Again, thank you to those who do help support me monetarily by being a YouTube member. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys all tomorrow for the review. So take care, everybody.